Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Megan was always seen as a centered woman, one of those who maintain order even when life tries to throw off balance. Married for almost 10 years to Brian, she had built a comfortable routine. It was the kind of relationship where everything worked, or seemed to work. They had an organized home, bills paid on time, planned outings, and some couple traditions they made sure to keep. But over time, the spark between them started to fade. Conversations became more objective, affection dwindled, and the days became exact repetitions of each other. There was still affection, but intimacy was slowly dissolving, as if they were living side by side without really looking at each other. At the office, the atmosphere was different. There, Megan felt more alive. The laughter among colleagues, the improvised lunches, the side conversations while the boss talked about deadlines. That's where Travis entered her life. An older man, confident, with that demeanor of someone who already knows the effect he has on women. He was never inappropriate, but his words carried a rehearsed charm. Megan knew the stories. She had heard from 2 co-workers that he had been involved with married women. They talked about it as if it were a mischief, something between forbidden and irresistible. There were no judgments, just a kind of excitement disguised as secrecy. One of them even joked that he was like a one-night addiction. Megan laughed along, pretending indifference, but a part of her became curious. Maybe because of the lack of emotion she felt at home. Maybe because of the way Travis looked at her in the hallways, or how he complimented details that Brian no longer noticed. At first, they only exchanged a few messages in the team group chat. Then came private conversations. Always light, always with a layer of double meaning. Travis knew how to advance and retreat at the right time, and this made Megan feel desired in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. And that affected her. It was like lighting a match in a dark room. The feeling was dangerous, but addictive. The messages started taking on a different tone. The flirting, which before was only suggestive, now had a time, place, and clear invitation. Travis knew what he was doing. He had experience in this kind of game. He was direct, precise, calculated. One day, while Megan was drinking coffee at her desk, he approached from behind, discreetly touched the back of her chair, and said in a low voice, without even looking at her, "I'm leaving early today, right after lunch. My apartment is nearby. I'll wait for you there. We'll have an hour." And he left without waiting for a response. Megan froze. She felt her face heat up and her heart race. That direct proposition seemed unreal, but at the same time, it carried a tension she couldn't explain. For the rest of the morning, she tried to focus on work, but her mind kept going back to that sentence. She thought of 1,000 reasons not to go. She thought about what could happen, the consequences, everything she had to lose. But deep down, the decision had already been made. When the clock struck noon, she told a coworker she needed to leave to take care of something personal and grabbed her bag. The building where Travis lived was practically next to the office, so it only took a few minutes to walk there. He opened the door the moment she arrived. He had a firm look, almost cynical, as if he already knew she would come. It was clear this wasn't the first time he had done this. Nothing about that meeting seemed improvised. The dim light of the apartment, the background music, the way his jacket was casually thrown on the couch, it all seemed meticulously planned. Megan walked in, trying to act as if she had control of the situation. Travis greeted her naturally, as if she were someone with whom he had an old agreement. He said they had exactly 50 minutes and that she didn't need to say anything. He offered her a glass of wine, made a quick comment about her perfume, and in a matter of seconds, closed the distance between them. Megan, without saying a word, let it happen. She felt her body being guided, and her mind, numbed by the whirlwind of sensations, simply followed. It was intense. Quick. Cold, even. Travis knew exactly how to guide the moment, as if everything followed a script he had used before. When it was over, he stepped back, gave a satisfied smile, and said he needed to return to work. Megan composed herself, fixed her hair in front of a mirror, picked up her bag, and left. She walked back with firm steps, trying to appear indifferent, but inside, her heart was still racing. She entered the office building as if returning from a regular lunch. No one noticed anything. No one suspected. And she, convinced that this would be buried in oblivion, went back to her desk, responded to emails, and spent the rest of the afternoon repeating to herself that it would never happen again. What she never imagined was that everything that happened in that room had been recorded. Every movement, every sound, every second. And that one day, it would escape from where it should have stayed forever. On the way back, she kept repeating to herself that this was just a mistake. A one-time episode. That it wouldn't happen again. She deleted the messages, blocked Travis's number, and decided to move on with her life. But what she didn't know was that Travis had a sick habit. He filmed everything that happened in his bedroom without the women knowing. And that night, which Megan believed she had buried forever, was recorded with perfect sound and image, waiting for the day it would all come to light. Megan spent the following days as if fulfilling an invisible penance. If anyone looked from the outside, they'd say she was the same as always. Arriving on time, smiling at co-workers, exchanging messages with Brian throughout the day, and still giving attention to friends who, coincidentally or ironically, had also experienced similar situations. They talked about it with unsettling nonchalance, as if it were just a chapter out of the ordinary, something everyone had the right to experience at some point. They said the important thing was to know how to come back, maintain control, close the door after opening it. Megan listened carefully, absorbing each justification as a way to ease what she carried inside. Over time, that memory stopped being a burden and began to feel like a story that only existed in her mind. A secret without witnesses, a mistake without proof. At home, life with Brian took an interesting turn. He started becoming more present, more affectionate. He prepared simple dinners on ordinary days, complimented her new haircut, asked if she wanted to watch something together. Megan was confused at first, as if expecting him to have noticed something, but over time, she concluded it was just a good phase. Maybe he was trying to rekindle something they had let cool down, or maybe it was just the reflection of a lighter woman, who smiled more often and spoke with more enthusiasm. Either way, it made her cling even more to the idea that everything she had done hadn't changed anything in fact. It hadn't affected the relationship. And if it caused no harm, then perhaps it really wasn't as serious as she initially thought. Weeks turned into months. Brian showed no signs of suspicion. Their conversations flowed more easily, weekends became less silent. Megan found herself believing that, in some strange way, that slip-up had brought new energy to their marriage. It was as if it had broken down an internal barrier that prevented her from seeing her husband in a different light. She began to appreciate the small gestures more, sought closeness, and laughed at his jokes with more sincerity. The man she had married seemed to be back. Or maybe it was her who had rediscovered herself after so long operating on autopilot. In her mind, it was like she had taken a shortcut to find the main road again. Her friends continued their Friday gatherings. Amidst glasses of wine and overlapping conversations, the topic of Travis came up occasionally. None of them spoke with guilt. There was an unspoken pact that everything involving that name should stay in the past. When someone mentioned it, it was always in a joking tone or with short phrases, like, "It was just an adventure," or "He knew what he was doing." Megan kept up the laugh, but inside, she began to feel something strange. A discomfort that arose when someone talked about how experienced he was or how he always seemed to have everything under control. It was as if something in her knew that it wasn't over, even without any real reason to think that way. She decided to bury it once and for all. She deleted all the old messages, cleared the chat history, wiped the phone records clean. She wanted to get rid of any trace. More than that, she wanted to believe that none of it had left marks. Life with Brian continued peacefully. They went out to dinner, planned a family trip, and during one of those nights when they lay closer than usual, she looked at him and felt a pang of guilt mixed with relief. She thought about telling him. About confessing everything. But the idea died before fully forming. It would carry the weight of a bomb. It would destroy what they had rebuilt. And in the end, she concluded that silence was the best path. A mistake is a mistake, she told herself. But an exposed mistake is a tragedy. And Megan thought she had escaped the tragedy. The confidence she felt in her own narrative grew as the days passed without anything from the outside threatening the castle she had built. Travis seemed to have disappeared from the company. People said he had quit and accepted a job offer in another city. His departure was discreet, without formal goodbyes, and this reassured Megan. To her, it was as if the past had been swept away with him. No one talked about it anymore, and there were no signs that anyone knew anything. The days returned to normal. The marriage seemed stable, work flowed, and the guilt slowly dissolved, as if time had the power to erase traces. Megan believed she had won. That the secret that had tormented her for a while was truly buried. That what she had lived with Travis would stay only with her and her friends. They also moved forward, each dealing with their own silences. None of them showed regret. The past had been sealed like a pact between accomplices who wouldn't leave any traces. And for a long time, everything went well. The world remained intact. But what Megan didn't imagine was that not every pact survives time, and some secrets, no matter how well hidden, still breathe in the dark, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Travis's name came back into Megan's life in the worst possible way. She was at home when Brian called her, without changing the tone of his voice. He had his cell phone in hand and his eyes fixed on the screen. He just said that there was something she needed to see. Megan thought it was news, a funny picture, anything. But as soon as she looked, she felt her stomach churn. The frozen image of a video filled the screen. A second later, the video started. And there she was. Her face. Her gestures. Her body. Everything visible, explicit. Travis also appeared, from different angles, as if the scene had been captured from more than one camera. Megan pushed the phone away with a jerk and tried to say something, but Brian had already gotten up, dropped the device on the table, and silently headed to the bedroom. She stood motionless for a few seconds, trying to understand what was happening. The video looked like it had been taken from an adult site. The quality was too high to have been accidental. The angles were deliberate, positioned in places only someone accustomed to doing this would know how to use. The feeling was of being invaded. Expelled from herself. A video that, until that moment, she had no idea existed. And the cruelest part, everything was happening right in front of Brian's eyes. The man who shared her life now also shared the embarrassment spreading across the internet like a plague. Minutes later, she received a message from a friend, "Have you seen this?" The response came before she even thought. She typed only a "what," hoping it was about something else. But the friend sent a link. Another video. It wasn't just her. Other women from the former office were also exposed. Travis's face appeared in almost all of them. He had recorded everything. Everyone. And now it was going viral. Adult sites published it with catchy titles, messaging groups circulated edited clips, and even fake profiles began appearing with compilations. A complete scandal, without filters, without control. Megan tried to say something, anything, but Brian was already standing. The phone was still on the table, the screen now dark. He walked toward the bedroom with firm steps, opened the door, and locked it behind him. She sat frozen, her heart pounding, feeling heat rush to her face and hands. She wanted to run after him, explain, cry, kneel if necessary, but the sound of the lock turning from the inside killed any impulse. She slowly approached, pressed her ear to the door, but everything was silent. No sounds. Not even footsteps. Not even heavy breathing. It was as if there was a void on the other side. She spent the night sleepless. Sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the wall. Her mind spun in circles, trying to find a way to reverse what had already been done. In the morning, Brian came out of the bedroom, wearing the same clothes from the day before, passed by her in the living room, and grabbed the car keys. His eyes were swollen. His face tired. He looked at her for a second but said nothing. And left. Megan spent the entire day at home, waiting for him to return with a word, a question, even a shout. But when the door opened in the late afternoon, he entered, went upstairs, and locked himself in the bedroom again. That night, she tried sending a message to Travis. The number was out of service. She tried social media, everything deleted. His profile had vanished as if it had never existed. It was as if he had prepared an escape route. As if he had known, from the beginning, what he was doing. This realization chilled her. Travis recorded everything. And from what the messages and comments showed, other women were in the same situation. Megan wasn't an isolated case. She was part of a pattern. Part of a dirty game she never imagined she was playing. 2 days passed. Brian didn't exchange a single word with her. He slept locked in the bedroom. He ate out. He avoided any attempt at contact. Megan left notes. Sent messages. Tried to talk in every possible way. No response. On the third day, she got up earlier and decided to make coffee. A simple gesture, perhaps foolish, but it carried a last thread of hope. When he came downstairs, she stood waiting. Brian looked at her for a few seconds. His face remained expressionless. His voice was low but firm, "You need to leave." He said it like delivering a verdict. There was no anger in his eyes, no sadness. Just a quiet pain, the kind that had already given up fighting. Megan didn't argue. She went upstairs, grabbed a small suitcase, stuffed some clothes, a charger, documents. She came down and stopped by the door. Brian was leaning against the living room wall, staring at the floor. She opened her mouth, but he raised his hand, asking for silence. She understood. She left without looking back. There was nothing left to say. Out on the street, she wandered aimlessly. She tried calling one of her friends, but the call went straight to voicemail. She sent a message to another, but there was no reply. When she opened social media, she realized she had been removed from 2 groups. One acquaintance posted a generic phrase, full of morals and indirect jabs. Her name wasn't there, but the intention was obvious. Megan felt the world pulling away. With every notification, more pain. The video was still circulating. People were still commenting. Platforms tried to remove it, but new links kept popping up. Sites replicated it, fake profiles created content around it, anonymous people made jokes as if she were just a character. But she was real. She was alive. And she felt everything. Travis disappeared. No sign, no apology. No attempt to fix what he had done. He turned to dust. And she was left with the aftermath. Carrying the weight of a mistake she thought was buried but now dragged behind her wherever she stepped. The betrayal that once lived only in her memory now existed in videos, in words, in stares that followed her on the streets. What started as desire turned into ruin. What began with an informal invitation in the office hallway was now an open wound in front of the world. She, who believed she had control of the situation, discovered in the most brutal way that she controlled nothing. That it only took one choice, one impulse, to lose everything. And in that moment, alone, with a suitcase in hand, Megan realized that the true punishment wasn't being exposed. It was being forgotten by those who once smiled with her, and now pretended she never existed. Months passed, and the divorce was finalized. Signed without a fight, without lawyers in the room, without exchanges of insults. It was as if both had already understood that everything had been completely destroyed and trying to save anything would be like salvaging rubble after a fire. Brian left the paperwork organized, reviewed the terms with precision, and didn't even bother to ask if she agreed. She just signed. She was so exhausted, so drained, that her only wish was to finish it quickly. Neither of them wanted to divide assets in detail, because what mattered most, respect, the bond, the dignity of what they had lived, no longer existed. The ending was dry, direct, definitive. Megan left the courthouse with a copy under her arm and a strange feeling between relief and humiliation. Her life changed completely. She rented a small apartment in another part of the city, a simple place where almost no one knew her. She needed to start over from somewhere. She tried looking for work in smaller companies, unrelated to her previous history, and got a job as an administrative assistant at a logistics firm. It wasn't what she did before, and the salary barely covered her expenses, but she accepted it. The priority was to disappear from the radar. She wanted to stay far from anything that reminded her of the past. She changed her phone number, deleted her social media, avoided saying her last name when introducing herself. She lived as if she were a patched-up version of herself, surviving with what was left. She still received strange looks when she went out in public places. Some people recognized her. Others just stared longer than usual, and that was enough to set off all the alarms in her head. She walked with short steps, always alert, avoiding crowds. She started ignoring unknown messages and rejecting calls from numbers she didn't recognize. Paranoia took over her routine. Megan got used to the silence, the loneliness, the bitter taste of feeling cancelled by the world. She broke a code. Crossed a line. And even though others had crossed it too, she was the one who got exposed. Sometimes, she mentally replayed that afternoon in Travis's apartment. The direct invitation, the walk there, the timed encounter, the false sense of control. It all seemed so distant, so unreal, as if she had lived it outside her own body. But it was her. It was her. No external force pushed her decision. No circumstance justified it. Accepting this was like swallowing shards of glass every day. She tried convincing herself, for weeks, that she was only human, that everyone makes mistakes, but the world didn't want to hear that narrative. It preferred to see her as the villain, as the symbol of what no one wants to admit exists, the woman who cheated, who got caught, who became a headline. Travis remained missing. Some women considered going to the police, but the public exposure was so overwhelming that most chose silence. Shame became a chain. No one wanted to relive it all again in front of a detective, a judge, a prosecutor. And he knew that. That's why he recorded. That's why he kept everything hidden. Travis bet on shame as a shield, and it worked. While they carried the guilt, he vanished into thin air. The attempt at rebuilding was slow. Megan started therapy but quit after a few sessions. She told the psychologist it was useless to dig into what couldn't be changed. She just wanted to learn to endure. Gradually, she began creating new routines. She shopped at the market at the same time every day, took short walks, wrote in an old notebook things she didn't have the courage to say out loud. No plans for the future. No real hope. Just the desire to get through the day without more surprises, without more videos, without more judgment. Brian appeared once, months after the divorce. She saw him by chance at a cafe. He was with a friend. Laughing. Seemed fine. He wore new clothes, his face looked calmer, like someone who had left a heavy burden behind. Megan didn't approach. She stood on the sidewalk for a few seconds and left. That night, she cried silently, lying on the thin mattress in her rented room. Not for the end of the marriage. Not for what she lost. But for the certainty that it would never be forgotten. She could change cities, jobs, names, but her image had already been fixed in a place that no longer belonged to her. People erased stories. The internet didn't. She stopped trying to understand. Stopped justifying herself to herself. She started accepting her own ruin as part of what she had become. Like a scar that burns when reminded of the pain but doesn't disappear even after the skin heals. And so she moved forward. Head down. Promising nothing for tomorrow. Aware that some mistakes, even small ones, drag consequences that are too big. And that sometimes, just one wrong step is enough to lose everything it took a lifetime to build.
Suspicious of your wife or daughter-in-law? Don't go through what we saw in the video. Check the link in the comments and get the ebook with valuable tips and investigator-approved sites to clear your doubts.
Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.